And now you're working for earning a living with Westland Ventures.
Westland Ventures, right.
Which is named after Grover Cleveland's mansion.
Correct.
Which is where you live.
I live in a very historic home, a home that I renovated. It was built in 1854 and ended up being Grover Cleveland's retirement home in Princeton. And being a huge history buff, this was a sort of a life dream to get in there and renovate, restore this residence, and still hear him thumping through the halls every once in a while at night when I'm trying to sleep.
Did you really?
Sure. It might be the furnace or the heaters going off.
Do you ever call one of those Ghostbuster people that come check
Haven't done that yet. Do you know some?
But my wife watches it on TV.
Okay.
There's a guy who'll come out with a video camera.
All right, maybe we'll do that.
You probably have to give Rush Holt equal time if you do it between now and November.
I'm not sure we're going to get equal time because he's basically ignoring me. So.
Okay, but you told Matt Rooney on his Shaved Jersey blog that Grover Cleveland was your hero, one of your heroes.
One of my heroes, yeah.
Yeah, was that the case prior? Did you buy Westland and became a Grover Cleveland guy, or did you love Grover Cleveland and you went looking for his house?
I love American presidential history, and I know a little bit about every president. Obviously, owning the home and restoring the home and studying his life and reading his letters and collecting some of his letters, I've learned a lot more about him. And as I said to you before we went on camera, I might be the foremost and only collector of Grover Cleveland antiquities in America. So I've learned a lot about him. And the interesting thing about Grover Cleveland, he was the classic, Horatio Alger story, a poor kid from West Caldwell, New Jersey. He went west to seek his fortune, stopped in Albany, which was basically the perimeter of the frontier, decided to gather his strength, and ended up staying in, Buffalo. Ended up staying in Buffalo, and within a short period of time became sheriff of Buffalo County, mayor, governor of New York, and president of the United States in an enormously short period of time, and ended up being a great reform-minded president. Was really, even though he was a Democrat, he fought Tammany Hall, which dominated the Democratic Party. He was a clean government guy. He was a hard money Democrat, ever since then, including up till today. Democrats want to debase the currency and help debtors.
Well, yeah, by hard money Democrat, you mean he wanted to keep the gold standard, whereas the others in both parties wanted to keep
debase the currency,
make it based on silver.
Silver, yeah. Exactly. So he was, a lot of interesting things about his life, but you get asked, who's your hero? We can always say the Ronald Reagans or Teddy Roosevelt, but here's somebody who.
And it's an interesting example, and since you said that, I started studying Grover Cleveland because I've made no secret about this. You're a newcomer to the political arena, and I've written, who is this guy? And you wouldn't talk to me.
Who is Grover Cleveland?
No, who is Scott Sprell?
Okay.
So, who is this? I wanted to know since January who is this guy, and we hadn't really had a chance to talk. So I started reading your book and reading about your experience on Wall Street, and then started looking into Grover Cleveland. And there's a lot about him that is consistent with what I've heard you say to other interviewers. Even just yesterday, and with that the patriotic, the Independence Tea Party interview that you had, you talked about crossing party lines. It was interesting. And Cleveland did that,
absolutely,
particularly in his first term. Cleveland's first term reminds me very much of how Governor Christie is governing. They came in, reformed, reinvented the veto, if you will. Talk about more. If I know you studied. What he did is heroic, relates to what you want to do in Congress and what you want to do for the country.
Well, the interesting thing about Cleveland is he did spend a significant amount of his presidency fighting his own party, whether it was the Tammany machine, whether it was the issues over hard to soft money, resisting the imperialist American push, which sort of dominated both parties. He was somebody who I think we could learn a lot from today. One of the things that I've said repeatedly and that I do believe is I think all of our politicians are working too much for their party and not enough for their country. And I think uber partisanship in Washington is bad for the country. And I don't care if you're a Republican or a Democrat. I will resist and I will fight and I will change and I will try to reform a system that has, you know, too many congressmen voting in lockstep with their party leaders. So what ends up happening is when you have a change of government, as we did with Obama and Pelosi coming in, you have a dramatic shift in the agenda, and it gets passed, and it doesn't represent the people. It just represents that we're at a cyclical point in time where the power has shifted from one side of the aisle to another, but it doesn't give them the right. I don't think it certainly doesn't give them the mandate to do what they've done. I don't think the agenda of Pelosi, Holt, Obama is in any way representative of the mainstream of America. And part of the reason that it's passed is because of this incredible ironclad control of the party bosses, where people are afraid to step out of line to say that's not right.
Is it that, or is it that they've been bought off?
I think it's part of the same thing.
Yeah.
If you're a congressman, you get elected, you're immediately running for re-election, and you need your party's support to raise money.
Right.
And you need to get the committee chairmanship, which increases your bargaining power when talking to special interests. The reality is that Washington, in my mind, is the center of a national spoils system that basically takes money from people who work to give it to people who are politically connected. And that's got to stop.
Yeah, but more than the bosses, and when I started talking about the money, you know, they had to buy off that senator from Nebraska to get the health care through.
Right.
It's greed and partisanship.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I agree with that. I agree with that. But there's just such a lack of courage. I mean, one of the things that I've told people is I'm not afraid to tell people the truth. And one of the essential truths that people need to hear is that this is an epidemic of irresponsibility. A country cannot live above its means forever. And they can't even live above their means in the medium term, because you will hit the wall. And then the consequences are much more severe than if you stop it ahead of time. And so I'm willing to tell people the truth at the risk of not being popular or not getting elected, perhaps. But I don't think that we're at a point in time where people want to be lied to anymore. They want to hear the truth. And that's why we're going to remove Rush Holt from office.
Okay.